Hey guys, welcome back to another one of these A-level preparation videos. Once again, the worksheet is going to be in a link in the description. It's on Patreon for anyone to download. And also there is a link to all of the A-level lessons that I did last year, which are of course still relevant. The spec hasn't changed, so I'll leave the link to that playlist also in the description in case you want to go a bit further on. But today what we're going to do is do some quadratic inequalities and simultaneous equations. And the reason being is, again, you've done this before, and that's kind of a theme for the first few videos that we've done so far. You've done it before, but it comes back, of course, and B, it's also used further. So these inequalities are going to come up again and again, especially in statistics, believe it or not, where you have to have a set of values for certain things. I'll get into that a lot later, but just so you're aware, you have to be able to do inequalities and simultaneous equations, of course. So let's get familiar with it. So for part A, it's quite a simple question, just solve the inequality. Now, to solve any kind of quadratic or any kind of inequality, what you have to do is make it equal to 0. So one of the sides, by side I mean either the left side, which is the x squared plus 8x, or the 20, the right side, has to be 0. Now, if I write out this inequality just one more time, what is it easier to do? Well, that's a really good question. First of all, you can do either. So I could move x squared plus 8x to the right hand side and get the same answer as if I moved the 20 to the left side. But think about what's easier. Now, the first thing to consider is that 20 is only one thing to move over, so it's quicker. But there's something else you should consider. How do you solve quadratics? You generally use things like factorization. Now, if I move the x squared to the right hand side, I now have a negative x squared and it's very ugly. Generally speaking, I want as much stuff to be positive as possible. So that's why I'm going to take the executive decision to move the 20 to the other side, which gives me x squared plus 8x minus 20 is greater than 0. And now you're going to solve. So in terms of solving, you guys should know how to factorize, but that's not the only way. I've shown you how to do it on the calculator before, but let's do it one more time. And as a matter of fact, there is a way to solve inequalities on your calculator as well. So I'll also show you that. But for now, let's do just solving the equation. So you go down to equation / func. Simultaneous equations do work. Then we've got polynomial for solving this. The degree is 2 because it's squared. And then we're just filling it in. So x squared, there's a 1 in front of x squared. Remember, it's not 0 just because there's nothing there. It's 1. X is 8. And the number on the end is negative 20. So equals, so my first solution is 2, and then we'll put an ampersand, x equals minus 10. And there we have it. Now, of course, our answer actually needs to be an inequality, because keep in mind, it's not set values. These set values are actually when this thing here equals 0, not when it's greater than. So we have to decide when it's greater than. How do we do that? There's a few different ways. One of them involves memory. So for example, if it's a positive x squared, you should know. But the most foolproof way is using your graph skills. And keep in mind, the next video we're doing, or one of the ones coming up, I can't actually remember, is all about sketching graphs. It's a big part of A-level maths. I know some of you are groaning already. So was I, believe me. So x equals 2 would be somewhere along here. Minus 10 would be somewhere over here. So this graph looks something like this. Now, you might be asking, how do I know it's a U shape? How do I know it's a happy face instead of a sad face? It's because of the x squared. If x squared is positive, then it gives you a U shape. So, positive x squared gives you a U shape. Negative x squared, don't need to put that, is an N shape. Always. So that's the really beneficial thing there. So we have minus 10 here and we have 2. Now, if I look at what I'm looking for, if I read the question, it says I want the values where it's greater than 0. Now, it equals 0 along this x-axis. Below the x-axis, the graph is negative, isn't it? Right? We go down to like minus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it goes back up here. So the positive parts are all of these parts over here. Right? Now, how do I write that? Well, this is when x is to the left of minus 10. So it means that x is less than minus 10. And Well, right here, well, it's to the right of 2. So that means it must be bigger than 2, which means it's x is greater than 2. Those are your answers. So a lot of students, even in sixth form, will just write this. And they go, yeah, there you go, it's done. Because it's between -10 and 2. That's not the case. Now this might look weird, right? It's less than -10 and greater than 2, that's weird. Well, don't forget, it's 2 separate areas. It's not one region, it's 2 separate regions. Okay? So that's the kind of key thing that you need to keep in mind when you do something like that. So that's 3 marks, pretty quick, and we're going to part B now. Before going on to part B, actually, I realised I didn't actually show you the secret method of doing it on your calculator. Now again, I really recommend this calculator because it's allowed in A levels. And I'm going to show you, so we can solve quadratics, that's really useful. We can also, if we go, so again, we would start from up here, press menu, you go down twice, right twice, and there's one called inequality. Press equals, and then it says polynomial degree. Now, weirdly enough, it doesn't do linear inequalities, but I'm hoping that that's not too bad by this point. So polynomial degree, again, we're looking at x squared, right? That's the biggest power of x we have. So the polynomial degree is 2. And then this comes up. Now this is where things get a bit spooky. But let's have a look at our question. Our question is x squared plus 8x minus 20 is bigger than 0. So that looks like this first option, right? ax squared plus bx plus c is greater than 0. So that's the option I'm going to pick. Now, if you moved this stuff here to the right side, you would have the one underneath it instead. But just kind of keep that in mind, right? So it'd flip around. So we're going to look at number 1. And now we're going to look, it comes up with the same screen as we had before when we're solving quadratics. So again, we're going to put 1, 8, and minus 20. Put that in and look what happens. So we get x is less than -10, and this is 2 is less than x, but hopefully you can see that's the same as x is greater than 2. It's just that you normally write it with the x on the left hand side. So both those are equivalent. Not bad, right? Not bad at all. So you can do it all on a calculator. But I would recommend, because keep in mind you need method marks, doing it on a calculator as a form of checking your answer. If you get the same thing, you've guaranteed you've got those 3 marks, which is really, really useful. But again, keep in mind, you need to make sure 0 is on one side of the equation, okay? Just 0, nothing else. So let's move on to part B. It says find the set of values of x which satisfy both of these inequalities. So we've done this first inequality here. These are our solutions. So let's put a box around these. So we've done that one. But now what we need to do is actually solve this expression over here. This inequality over here. So let's write that out quickly. And it's a 1 mark question, so you might be thinking, okay, this can't take too long. And you would be right. This is just solving a linear inequality, which I'm assuming you're okay with. It's solving a linear equation, basically. So again, if we look at the smallest x, we have this one, so I'm going to get rid of that one. So that gives me 18. And you can do this a lot faster, don't get me wrong. I'm just going to go through the steps. Move the 18 to the other side because we've already moved that one to the other side, and we have 2x. It's less than. So 23 minus 18 is 5, so that means x is less than 5 over 2. However, I'm going to write it as 2.5 for now. And so now what we need to do is find out one answer, because we have too many answers here. It says find the set of values which satisfy both. And we have these 2 conditions. So it's less than 2.5, less than -10, and greater than 2. And that's really important. Now, a lot of students, A2, year 13, brilliant at maths, might get this wrong because they're too proud, okay? What I want you to do is draw a number line as if you're in primary school, okay? I do it myself, and I'm hella old, so I expect you to do it. So let's say 0 is here. It doesn't need to be labelled fully, by the way. So I might just go up in like 5s or something ridiculous, right? It doesn't actually matter that much, right? In fact, you could go up in different amounts. It's not actually meant to be accurate. It's meant to be a representation. I'm going to write all 3 of these inequalities on my diagram. So x is less than 2.5. That's going to be somewhere like this. And it's less than, so it's all over here. And if you have a look, I haven't filled in the circle because it's not equal to. So x is less than minus 10, so let's do that. So that is going to be a circle going here, and that's going to be going all the way over there. And then we have x is greater than 2, so that is going to be just before x is 2.5 and over here. Okay? And now we're looking for the set of values that satisfy all of these. So let's have a look. X is less than 2.5. So if we want to cover all of those values at the same time, what we have is we have a couple of values over here where there's an overlap. And there's also going to be an overlap for all of these values, isn't there? So we're going to have x is less than minus 10 still. Because if you look, these two arrows overlap each other. And we're going to have a set of values over here. Because any number between 2 and 2.5 is also valid. Because less than 2.5 and greater than 2, there's a set of values, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, which all fit that criteria. Now, of course, we can't just write out 2.1, 2, 3, and 4 because it's every value between them as well. So the way I'm going to write that is I'm going to put and 2 is less than x is less than 2.5. So it's the values between 2 and 2.5 and less than minus 10. And that will be your solution. So hopefully that makes a bit more sense. Now we have a pretty good set of questions. So those of you that were in the Discord last year, you guys were praying for a quadratic simultaneous equation to come up in paper 3. And I agree they're not too bad. However, again, with A-level students, you guys tend to, I mean not you guys yet, but in the future, kind of neglect the earlier stuff because you think it's a bit easy, but then you make mistakes. So with quadratic simultaneous equations, all you need to do, you get about between 4 and 6 marks depending on the difficulty. What you need to do is rearrange the linear equation, so the one without any squares in it, and sub it into the second equation. Now, which one would I choose? Well, I would personally choose whichever one doesn't have multiple terms in the quadratic. So here you can see we have x squared and 8x. So I would want to rearrange this for y instead, because it actually makes it slightly, ever so slightly shorter. Ever so slightly. So let's get to it. If I rearrange that first equation, we get y is equal to 3 minus x, and we're going to sub that straight into this equation. So we have x squared plus 2. I'm going to write it as minus x plus 3 squared minus 8x equals 6. Now we're going to be expanding the brackets, but I'm going to leave the 2 on the outside. So if I expand that, we have minus x times minus x, which of course is x squared. Minus 3x will give me minus 6x, and then plus 9. Minus 8x equals 6. Expand the brackets, we have x squared plus 2x squared minus 12x plus 18 minus 8x equals 6. Now we can gather the like terms, so we have x squared plus another 2x squared, which gives me 3x squared. We have minus 12x minus another 8x, which is minus 20x. Then we have plus 18 equals 6. Let's move that 6 to the left-hand side. So now we have 3x squared minus 20x plus 12 equals 0. Now how would you solve this? Personally, shove it all in a calculator, nice and easy. So, menu, and this is, by the way, is the point, is that if you just use a calculator and write no working out, sometimes they do kind of deduct marks from that, because you're not actually proving that you know what you're doing, right? You're just using a calculator. Whereas this working out, all I'm using the calculator for is this final step. So again, equation slash func, polynomial degree is 2, and we're going to put 3 here. We're going to put minus 20 there, and we're going to put plus 12 there, which gives me x is equal to 6. And we want to actually space this out, because again, neatness actually does matter, because again, you want your examiner to have a really easy time reading your work. I know you don't particularly care about them, but they're less likely to make mistakes. And examiners can make mistakes, but if you make it super obvious, it's nice and neat. Now, this so far has given me all but the last mark, because you also need to find out what y is. And if you look here, we have an equation for y, nice and easy. So for this first part, y is equal to 3 minus 6, so it equals minus 3. So my two values there are x equals 6, y equals minus 3. That's my first pair of answers. Again, with quadratic simultaneous equations, you get 4 answers. They may be the same numbers, but it's still technically 4 answers. And then with this one, we just have y is equal to, and just showing you on the calculator as well, and I'm a bit lazy, 3 minus 2/3. So 3 minus, and then 2 over 3 is 7 over 3. And that's my other set of answers. Again, in terms of marks, you get between 4 and 6. It really does depend. So let's just say 5 marks for now. It's pretty good. And I know a lot of you actually like these from GCSE, so you should be thankful that they come back up. Now, of course, you use them in different contexts sometimes. Sometimes you get a question just like this. Cool. Sometimes what you have is you have an equation of a straight line being subbed into the equation of a circle. Use simultaneous equations, things like that. Parabolic equations, which we'll come up to next year, actually, or depending on how quick I get through it, but in A2, things like that. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. So find the coordinates of the points where the circle with this equation meets the line with this equation. So it's exactly like I said back here. It's just using, subbing in, it's just quadratic simultaneous equations, right? Because when they intersect, x and y are the same across both equations. And if you look, they've even rearranged it for us. So we're just going to take this and we're going to shove it straight into that expression. So x squared plus 3x minus 1 squared. Again, use brackets. Make sure you don't make stupid mistakes in just copying stuff out. I have had students in A-level maths that copy stuff out incorrectly and then get the wrong answer, and it baffles me. So let's keep going. X squared, expanding that. 3x times 3x is 9x squared. Then we'll have a minus 3x minus another 3x, that's minus 6x. Then minus 1 times minus 1 is plus 1. Minus 2x equals 19. Gather that together, we get 10x squared. Minus 8x from the minus 6x and the minus 2x. And then lastly, plus 1 equals 19. Move the 19 over. So we're left with 10x squared minus 8x minus 18. Yeah. Did you hear the uncertainty in my voice right there? And once again, head on over to the calculator, down twice, right once, equation slash function, polynomial degrees 2, fill this in. So minus 8 and minus 18. And when you've typed it in, by the way, I like to look again just to make sure everything's fine. So minus 18, you can even use the arrow keys to just like have a look, see what the numbers are. And we get 9 over 5, that's an awkward number, but whatever. And pressing equals one more time, we get minus 1. That's a much easier number to deal with. So to find the coordinate, and bear in mind it does say find the coordinates, so we should leave our answers as coordinates. That might be a bit of an obvious thing to say, but again, you'd be surprised in an exam. So what we're going to do is put in these values for x into y. Okay, so for the first one, press 1. By the way, if you press menu, you can use the numbers to select it. So I press number 1, just get straight back to calculation mode. So 3, open bracket, we have a fraction, which is 9, divided by 5, close bracket, minus 1. That gives me 22 over 5. You can leave them as fractions, of course. In fact, when it comes to coordinates, we tend to leave them as fractions. Get rid of this, and we're just going to change it to minus 1 for this one over here. And we get minus 4, probably a bit obvious. So most examiners would accept this. However, you know, we want to prepare for every eventuality. So the technical right answer would be it crosses at these two coordinates, 9 over 5, 22 over 5, and minus 1, minus 4. And again, putting little boxes around our answers or highlighting them or doing something along those lines means that what the examiner can do, open up the mark scheme, look at those boxes, look at the answer. Oh, you get 4 marks. Good job. You know, very, very easy, which means they don't have to think, which means, you know, they're less likely to make mistakes, less stressed about your exam. Now, for this question here, there isn't much different. The only difference I wanted to kind of point out is that in this case, it was rearranged for us. In this case, it's not. So what I would like you to do, if you have a pen and paper handy, is to pause it quickly and have a go at this question yourself. Again, I keep talking about this active learning. Watching a video, you're going to get like 20% of the information. Maths is very much practical. So what I want you to do, again, in a day or two, download these questions, attempt them for yourselves, see how much you retain. And in the attempt is where you're actually going to be learning how to do it. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Even if you're fine with quadratic inequalities from last year and simultaneous equations from last year, bear in mind that you've had a long summer break. It's going to be like 2 months long, 2.5 months. So you're probably going to forget some stuff. Anyways, we have one more thing after this, which, just FYI, one more question, and it is unique. Okay, it's very special, so do stick around for that. So this one, once again, we're doing the exact same things what we did up here, except we need to rearrange, and we need to make an executive decision on how we're going to rearrange it. So here we have y equals all of this, here we have x plus y equals this. It'd probably be easiest to rearrange for y and sub it straight into here. Again, it's completely and utterly dealer's choice. You can rearrange for x, you can do whatever you want, okay? So let's just rearrange for y because I said so. So we have y is equal to, let's make it minus x plus 7 instead of 7 minus x. They are the same thing, but visually for me, it's easier for me to see, so that's why I do it. And we're going to sub that straight into ye olde equation up here. So that will be minus x plus 7 equals x squared minus 2x plus 7. And remember, whenever you want to solve a quadratic equation, you want to move everything to one side. So I'm going to take all of this stuff and move it to the right hand side. So that gives me x squared. I've had to add x to both sides because it's minus x. So that gives me minus x. Minus 7 from both sides gives me 0 actually. So that equals 0. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. 7 and 7. Perfectamundo. So with this one, you can solve it using a calculator, although it's not really necessary. If you factorize out an x, you've got your two values. X equals 0, x equals 1. So you don't really need to do that. And in fact, summing it straight into here, again, I don't really need a calculator for that. So you're going to really learn that you can be a lot faster than a calculator in some instances. So minus 1 plus 7, that's going to be plus 6. Now, of course, this means you need to actually, check your answers and become confident in that. But so don't rush, is what I'm trying to say. 1, 6. There you go. Not too bad. Look how quick that was. Snap, 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 snap. 4 marks. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, again, for the last style of question that they can kind of give you with this, well, up to this level anyway. So when you're looking at this, you're probably thinking that doesn't look any different. However, this bottom part here, set notation. Some people call these inequalities that we've got all the way back here set notation. It's not. Set notation is very specific, and you're going to be using it a lot in statistics, and you have seen it before in GCSE maths, okay? Set notation is when you see stuff like this or something along those lines, okay? And you're going to see it a lot in A-level maths. Now, looking at it, you probably see what it means anyway. You probably don't actually need me explaining it to you. But I'm going to anyway because I want to. So, solve the inequality. What we're going to do is the same thing we did in the first couple of questions. Move the 20 over, so we have x squared minus x minus 20 greater than 0. And now I'm going to change it. I'm going to use a calculator. Now, this question is 3 marks. And the really interesting thing is they do take into account calculator use. Because finding the critical values, and what I mean by that is solving the equations, only gives you 1 mark. So you could solve by factorizing and making it equal to 0 and doing all that stuff. That's only 1 mark. The second mark is for actually choosing the right direction. So is x greater than or is it less than? That's the second mark. And that, again, encapsulates either using the calculator or using the graph like I showed you in the first question. So as you can see, it's only 2 marks, which is why they're able to kind of get away with this. It used to be, when this was a non-calculator, you'd get 4 or 5 marks for this. Now you only get 3. The third mark is for actually using set notation. So keep that in mind. So I'm just going to go straight for the inequality button. Polynomial degree, again, it's squared, so 2. And this looks like a greater than, so it looks like number 1 again. Number in front of x squared is 1. Number in front of x is minus 1. And the number at the end is minus 20. Equals, boom, we've got it. So we have x is less than minus 4. And I'm going to write it slightly differently. I'm going to say x is greater than 5. So again, the calculator does put it as like 5 is less than x. It's not wrong by any means. I've just always written it like this with the x on the left-hand side. Okay. So far we've got 2 out of the 3 marks. Okay, whoop-de-doo. Now, because we're all A-star students, aiming for those Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard university applications, let's talk about what set notation is. So this is a good notation, but the other notation that I showed you, it looks like this. And also technically, this comma is also going to change as well. Set notation has a colon in it. Now, I'm going to explain what this means right now, but I'm going to write this as an example. So the way I'd write this inequality is like this. And it's just x colon and then the same thing. And you might think, well, why on earth do we bother? Well, what it means is x is defined by x being less than -4. They use it in programming. They use it in A-level maths a lot, just as a new notation for the BANTs, but also because you're going to use it in the future. So when I did my physics degree, when I started doing quantum physics, all of a sudden we started using this notation. And I was thankful that A-level maths uses it because I had never seen it before, other than A-level maths, so I could get straight into it, instead of having to learn this new notation. So it is just a matter of convention, essentially. And what we do is, because we have multiple answers, we put them in curly brackets. Now, I'm just going to preface this. Every time you see me use curly brackets, it's going to look disgusting, but that's just the way it is. And this one, therefore, so have a think about what this one would look like in set notation. 1, 2, 3. Hopefully that's long enough time. It would be x is defined by, so x colon, x being greater than 5. And again, we're going to put a curly bracket. And the reason for that is we have 2 inequalities. With one inequality, you don't need the bracket because there's actually a symbol that goes in the middle. This comma means or, doesn't it? It's x is less than -4, x is greater than 5. It's or. How do we write or in set notation? This is where you're going to immediately remember where you've seen this before. You would write it as a U, like a horseshoe shape. Remember when you had things like find the probability that A or B? Do you remember? That's what set notation is, okay? And it is a fairly important thing. If you're going to do maths at university, then it's very important. Set notation comes up in many places because it's a very quick way of writing a lot of information. It's very condensed, and mathematicians are lazy, so they want to write as little as possible in the best way. So again, the reason why we have these curly braces is because we have this U shape, okay, this or sign. And because we have that, we need to actually differentiate what we mean by or. Is it x is less than -4 or greater than 5? No. It's this whole thing or this whole thing. And that brings us to the end of the video. So it wasn't too long, hopefully. Again, I'd recommend you go practice. The links to the actual worksheet are in the description. Again, it says Patreon, but it's completely free, okay? And also, there's a link to the A-Level Maths playlist, so you can peruse that at your leisure, see how this channel kind of started initially. They only have like 30 views, which is kind of funny. But we go a bit further into like binomial expansion and everything, do a bunch of questions. So other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Hope you're enjoying your summer. It's raining at the moment, so probably not. But I'll see you in the next one.